Hey guys, we're talking about lesson 4, and this is our professional skill, and we're going to talk about workplace safety. So, we've been talking about pests and using pesticides, handling those. Anytime you're handling chemicals, it's really important that you use safety because they are poisons, and if they're not handled properly, they could hurt you, your family, or pets. So, whenever you see a pesticide, or other hazardous chemical label, you're going to see these things right here. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of them. So you're going to see the brand name, chemical name, and the common name. You're going to see formulation, ingredients, and content. So what it includes. Examples of a formulation could be like emulsified concentrate, wettable powder, or soluble powder. So that's how it is made, what type it is. The ingredients list is going to have the active and the inactive ingredients. Manufacturer and registration numbers. They have to keep track of which batch this is from, what manufacturer it comes from, just in case there's some sort of problem, they can track it back. Signal words, so that's your caution, danger, warning. Precautionary statement, so it's going to tell you hazards of the chemical, what PPE, which is professional protective equipment that you need to wear when using the pesticide. Most of the time it's going to be some sort of mask, maybe goggles and gloves and closed toes, shoes, and jeans. Statement of practical treatment that tells you what to do if something happens. Usually it's going to be like call poison control. Statement of use classification. The EPA decides if a pesticide is classified as general use, which means if it's toxic to animals, people, or the environment, they are going to classify it as restricted use. Tell you how to use it, how you should not use it. The REI statement, so there's a period where people can't re-enter an area. So maybe if you put off like a bug bomb in your house, there's a certain amount of time you can't go in the house until that has cleared. So that's what that is. And how to store it and dispose of it properly. You can't just throw these things in the trash can. Usually you have to put it in a correct disposed waste container. So all these are on a pesticide label, any kind of label with anything dangerous, not only to protect the company, but to protect the customer as well. So it's important you know all of those and you are aware of those. So the label on all pesticides or other workplace chemicals, the OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is the branch of government responsible for workplace safety. It's going to require them to have a SDS, which is a safety data sheet. So this is a long sheet that's going to list all the hazardous chemicals. It may look kind of like the periodic table at times, and it's going to tell you how to take care of it if you get exposed to those chemicals, the toxicology of those chemicals, all of that information. So OSHA, that's their job, is to keep everyone safe. A lot of people give OSHA a bad rep just because they make them do all of these trainings and just protecting themselves as a company, but there is a reason for it, and it's because the agency is to set policies for workplace safety. So, for example, we talked about PPE. So some things, protection equipment might be gloves and boots. So they may have specific ones about that. So it says linings and leather will absorb pesticides. So all gloves and boots should be unlined and made of rubber. Tuck gloves into sleeves and the pesticide is being applied below waist level. Cover the sleeves if above waist level. Okay, that guy looks like off of Monsters Inc. So hat and coveralls, so the area of the body that are most likely to absorb pesticides are the head and the groin. So it's especially important to keep these areas covered. So they recommend hooded coveralls that are lightweight. Apron, like this right here. It's important to wear a rubbered or neoprene apron when mixing pesticides because concentrated amounts of chemicals so they don't splash onto your clothes. Goggles and face shields. Eyes are highly sensitive chemicals, so they need special protection. Goggles and protective shields make sure the barrier between them and the chemicals. And then respirators. Using a respirator prevents those working with pesticides from inhaling them into the lungs. So that's a really heavy-duty mask. So that's just an example of a few PPE to use when handling pesticides. So these are no joke. These should not be taken lightly. They are dangerous and they need to be handled with caution. So those pesticides are not the only hazardous waste produced in ag. We have medicines, paint, oil, coolants, brake fluid, aerosols, contaminated rags, gloves, batteries. There's a lot of other dangerous materials. Remember we talked earlier about how agriculture is one of the most dangerous careers. Well, you deal with a lot of dangerous stuff. So just make sure you're following all the regulations, you're reading the labels. For sharps, which are like needles, you have to have a sharps container. So you'll place them in sharps container. That's just a spot where all those needles are going to go. That way, if someone doesn't accidentally touch it, because that could be a really problem if you use some sort of serious medicine or vaccine and you use that needle and you threw it on the ground. Well, then a little kid comes up and they pick up that needle and it pricks their finger. All of a sudden, they've got that medicine inside of them. So this is why these workplace safety processes are in effect to prevent these accidents. And then it goes on to preventing accidents. So ag is one of the most dangerous industries to work in. But if you are aware and you know the most common accidents, you're likely to prevent them. So the most common types of injuries for farm workers are transportation incidents. So that's tractor-related, rollovers, falls, being run over, collisions. This equipment's really loud, so it's hard to hear. OSHA has published plans for cost-effective rollover protective structures that you can build yourself. Wearing a seatbelt. They've got cabs now on most of these tractors to help prevent that. So we've come a long ways. Operating machinery, tractors, forklifts, other equipment is a major cause of these accidents. Safe operation. It requires you to be trained, so make sure you're trained to do it before you hop on that tractor. Protective clothing, loose clothing could get caught in equipment, such as long hair. You need to tie that back. Entanglements in machinery could even cause lost limbs, fingers, even fatalities. I know several farmers and agriculture workers who have, at least lost one finger due to an agriculture accident. So toxic chemical exposure is another common problem. So just read labels. Make sure you're in a well-vented area if you're having to work with chemicals. Maybe let's not do it in a closed shop. So just make sure you're keeping track of that. Suffocation is a risk too, especially with grain bins. These are grain bins. This is where grain is stored. It's very dangerous working with these. If you feel confident, accidents can happen. Okay, so one accidental slip, you could suffocate under the weight of the grain, and it's like quicksand. It's going to draw you in. Working with animals also causes injuries. You never know. You may know the animal very well, but you never know exactly what they're going to do, especially when an animal has a baby. They change. They become very protective of that baby. So you really need to be on your A game. So it says, according to OSHA, to be safe, keep the workplace safe, you need to post emergency numbers by the phone. Most cases call 911. But you may need poison control or other numbers. Know the address so that you're able to give clear directions. If there's an accident at the farm, know where to tell the dispatch to go. Identify those with the company prepared to handle certain kinds of emergencies. So dedicate people that are in charge to eliminate confusion. Know the location of emergency equipment, such as fire extinguishers and the materials required to manage a chemical spill. Have an escape plan. Know how to get out. So someone at each workplace needs to be trained for CPR. It's even better if everyone has a training. Any injury requires medical attention, but the simple steps you can take for the person gets proper attention can make a huge difference and even save a life. So some basic things to know on a workplace is control bleeding with pressure. So use a clean cloth to apply pressure to the wound. Just help stop the bleeding, elevate the affected body part. Treat physical shock. So if an injury is not threatening, shock can lead to death. Someone may be in shock if they have pale or bluish skin or cold to the touch, vomiting, dull, sunken eyes, or are really thirsty. Usually you should keep the person lying on their back and cover them with blankets. Make sure their airway is open and don't give them anything to eat or drink. Only move an injured person when necessary. So otherwise you should leave them be so you don't further harm them. Use the Heimlich remover on choking victims. Flush burns with water immediately. Cold water with burns. Treat heat exhaustion or stroke with cool. So give them a cool water to drink. Pour cool water all over the body. Respond to the form of poisoning, corrosive poisoning on the skin. That requires you to move saturated clothing and flush with water. Call poison control always, and they'll tell you how to do it. CPR and heart attack. So you need training in CPR to assist someone who stopped breathing or has no pulse. For someone experiencing symptoms of a heart attack, including chest pains, place the person in a comfortable position and raise the head and chest if needed. Administer CPR. If there's an AED available, follow those instructions. So workplace safety is a skill that needs to be taught to all employees. And make sure the information is available in other languages. So about 50% of those who work in agriculture are Latinos. So having safety materials and training available in Spanish and English is very important. Then you have your knowledge check.